Hi there, listeners of Illusion. Those of you who follow us on Twitter or follow the Patreon will know that this episode was an absolute goblin horn to edit. Everything went wrong. Not only did the editing software bug out on me, which meant that I had to, in the end, find something different to edit it with, there were also some audio issues that I've done my best to fix, especially with David Rowe's microphone. I've tried to edit around it. I've done the very best I can, but there's just a few little niggly bits that I just wanted to make you aware of. I'd like to say an extra special thank you to everyone who helped me out on Twitter, especially Demon Tomato Dave and Anyone for Seconds podcast. You were fantastic. Thank you for being so patient with me. And with that, on with the episode. Welcome, listeners of Illusion, to Temporal Discussion, the episode-by-episode Nightmare Retrospective podcast. I'm Martin Harder, and I'm a professional rabbit.
And I'm Martin O'Doney, and I am a seriously mad bunny who gets paid bad money by Mr. H. In fact, I've never been paid any money by Mr. H.
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever paid you.
Nearly 2 years now, and he still hasn't paid me a penny.
And today we're very pleased to introduce a very special guest, the artist behind the many memorable chambers and backdrops of the dungeon, and also, as my wife rightly pointed out, the artist behind the cover of James Pond 2 Operation Robocod, David Rowe.
Hi, yeah, nice to be here.
Welcome aboard, David. James Pond's too? Right, I'm interested now.
You did a lot of video game cover artwork, probably around the time you were doing Nightmare.
I did things like Shadow of the Beast 3 for Psygnosis, loads of stuff, Telecom Soft. I did hundreds of artworks. I was just flat out. I was delivering one of those karate games, Exploding Fist 2, to Melbourne House in Richmond. And they said, we've had inquiries from Anglia TV, and they're looking for someone who can do the airbrush stuff and the textures, and they'd like to speak to you. So I just grabbed my portfolio and shot straight up to Norwich, funnily enough.
David, we'll be asking you a lot of questions as we go through the episodes. I hope you're prepared for that. But before we get into the episode proper, we have a few questions from our Patreon supporters, if you'd be so kind to do your best to answer them.
Yep.
Peter Sidon asks, which chamber was your favourite to design, be it style-wise, the execution of the chamber, or just one you really had fun making?
I really liked the Lilith room because I enjoyed doing the serpent's head.
Oh, that's one of our favourites as well.
But the challenge was, to the left, I had to make or draw, paint a series of rocks at various heights that Lilith would sit on. And now that was achieved within the Blue Chroma Key studio by 1 meter by 1 meter blocks. So for Lilith to sit on, it was 2 meters long and 1 meter high. And because the grid was so tight, I could actually position that.
Yeah, so everything was very carefully blocked.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, she sat on it and put her feet on the next one down. And when I actually saw that for the first time on air, it blew me away because she was actually sitting on the rock with shadows cast, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, because it brings your paintings to life, so to speak, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because the angle was from a camera 10 feet high, angled down 10 degrees, and a specific lens. And the special effects guy, Jean-Pierre in France, produced that grid. And it was the Bible. Everybody had to work to that. Position of doorways, it could be precisely located. And then I would just let rip with all the textures and, the mess.
Peter would also like to thank you, as we all would, for the awesome work that helped to make Nightmare one of his favourite shows whilst he was growing up.
Well, that's great. Thanks. I really enjoyed doing it. It was a hell of a lot of pressure. I do remember I just secured a lot of print work for Telecom Soft at the time. And I had a call from Sally Freeman, who produced the first series, saying, she was in tears. She's saying, I don't think I've got a programme. We haven't had a single artwork from you yet. So I employed one of my ex-art students to come in and work on all the print work. And I just dropped that completely. I set up a parallel motion board in my kitchen, and they just set to work. They'd come for long days, and I would concentrate on Nightmare. and I had to set the alarm for 6 a.m. and I worked till 2 a.m. every day for 3 weeks. And they got all the rooms. So I was running on adrenaline. It was a pretty exciting time to be alive, I've got to say. I just loved it.
Creativity does let the adrenaline flow, doesn't it?
Yeah.
David Thompson would like to know if there were any chamber concepts that the creative team just couldn't get to work, and did you have a particular piece of unused artwork that you'd love to see in a quest?
Yeah, there were quite a few. I think I did about 48 in all. There were a number of rooms. There was one which had doorways, 2 at the back, 1 each side. It was called the Bland Room, and it was bland, and the idea was they were going to tart it up, but they never did use it. I'm not too sorry about that. There was one I had particular problems with, is the stomach room. It's very red and organic, and it's got bubbles in it and veins and a great sphincter at the back.
Yeah.
And I was sleeping. I got called and by Ros Inglis, a designer, saying, "Yeah, love the room, but we can't really see the geometry because it hasn't got the floor and walls in it. It's just amorphous." So I had to do a quick overlay and get that faxed up to them so that they could see where to align everything. The most amusing thing about that room was something Sue Child said. You know, they said the room came up and the question was, "Where am I?" And the answer was, "You're in a womb."
How much creative control did you have over the rooms? Did you basically get told what they wanted and then you did it? Or did you get to come up with the applications of the room itself?
Well, we really worked as a team. They obviously had to plan entrances and exits. They had to be correct and they had to work. So, you know, as an illustrator, you're used to working within constraints, and that was certainly one of them. And as I say, everybody worked towards that grid so that we all knew what we were doing. And, you know, bless Tim, he made it work like clockwork. My sort of creative input was how to get sort of really rough textures, granite and rock, you know, and I really enjoyed that part of it. One of the techniques I did was to get the masking film backing film, the backing sheet, which is very shiny. I would spray that and spatter all over it, turn it upside down, and then print it onto the illustration board. And it would run, it would do all sorts of weird things. You might spot that in some of the rooms. But it made the rock texture come alive, and I could work into that and really believe what I was doing was looking like rock.
Here's one from Benjamin Bloom. Series 3 is the last series prior to the introduction of photographic backgrounds and real-world locations. I understand that Tim Child wanted to move the show on, but did you feel that could have been done using your artwork? And what sort of direction would you have gone, having been asked to move the dungeon to new places?
Wow, yeah. At some of the shows that I've done with Hugo, you know, these games conventions and so on, he said he thought the show lost its magic after the 3rd series, and he said that on a few occasions, which touched me greatly. I thought that was a lovely thing to say. But then I thought, having done 48 rooms, I was pretty well dungeoned out, I think. But I must say that I tended to lose interest. I wasn't glued to the box 5 o'clock on a Friday very much after that.
You still did have some input in the later series, though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Mark Wells, who was, you know, a co-conspirator with Broadsword Television, he came down and we did what was called castle consultancy. And, you know, as I'd moved to Wales, I was familiar with a lot of the old castles. So we went around, he had a little Video 8 camera, and they recorded all those to come back later with remote helicopters and real helicopters and so on. Carrick Kennan was a good one. Llandelo, that's a pretty spectacular castle anyway. But yeah, I did have that sort of input, and I suppose a lot of the artwork for the rooms was actually used in parts, and they could cut them up electronically.
David at N Rabbit would like to know, in terms of room design, was there anything you would have liked to see them do in Nightmare that they didn't?
Well, I did suggest creating new grids and doing cutscenes that would do a different view, you know, sort of ground view looking up, and you know, using the same. Yeah, I would have developed the same room, but from a different angle. I think Tim thought I was just touting for a bit more work off him. But yeah, that would have worked quite well to have those cuts.
There was a little bit of that in season 3 because they started reversing camera angles in a couple of rooms, didn't they?
No, that's right. Yeah, we did develop another grid, which was slightly lower, and it left the vanishing point on the horizon line halfway up the screen. I don't really think it showed too much, quite honestly, in the finished product. I was tasked with making the rooms lit in such a way that they're reasonably flat and that they could work some computer graphic magic to change them various ways. They could use them numerous times in different lighting. But the way that was achieved, given the technology at the time, was to put a medium transparency grey film over the top of it and then work in erasing parts of it to create beams of light and so on. Well, you can imagine nowadays that you would have absolutely brilliant CG, the lighting, the specular effects. It would be sensational, really, that lighting effects and so on have come on so much. I mean, I'm enjoying Oculus Quest 2 at the moment with things like Star Wars Galaxy's Quest. And the graphics in there are absolutely stunning. and wouldn't that be great to have Nightmare in that headset?
And lastly, Feathered Menace would like to know how long it took to paint each room.
I had a target during that hectic 3 weeks that I would get the drawing completed and the first mask down by 2 a.m. And the next day I would have to work on the painting, finish it, and get the drawing down for the next one. Didn't always make it, but I came close.
So basically about a day and 3/4, something like that.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I mean, some cooked like that. I really like the Crone room, to be honest. There was a lot of detail in that. And that must have taken a bit longer than that, that's for sure.
Thinking back to what art programs were like on computers back in 1987, I'd say that is impressively quick. I remember being introduced to a really, really early version of Windows in about 1987, and you just couldn't do anything with it.
I did have a go at doing collapsing floors for the Lilith room on the baseboard Supernova that Robert Harris had at the Travelling Mac Company. But they did all that work. The only other real go I had at doing computer graphics was John Hollis at Quicksilver when I did work for them early days. He made up a light pen and a bit of software, and I could actually plant the light pen and make sprites for a game called Aquaplane. There were 8 colours and 8 half-bright colours. And at the end of it, I said, wow, that was kind of fun doing the animations, but I don't think I want to do that again.
Thank you very much for that, David. I think we'll move on to the actual episode now. Today we're looking at Series 3, Episode 5. This episode was initially broadcast on CITV on Friday, October the 6th, 1989. Ride on Time was still number 1 in the singles charts, and Dead Poets Society continued to top the box office.
It doesn't say much for the general quality in the movies or music at this point in 1989 that those two are still stuck in first place.
Maybe it says that Dead Poets Society is that good a film that it stayed up there for, 3 weeks now?
It's a Robin Williams film. The odds are against it.
So now time turns. The recording light burns. Time out is gone. The podcast is on.
Ah, welcome. It seems that time turns, the fire burns, and adventuring is once more upon us. Draw near and concentrate now, for it's only by studying the heroics of others you can ever hope to become a hero. In a moment, the future becomes an open book, but for now, let's look back into the past.
My wife wrote this bit, can you tell?
Yes.
Treguard opens the show whilst brandishing his big chopper, and then we move on to the Dungeon Ditty.
I'm not rising to that one. That is just too easy. Okay.
Not rising to that one, yeah. Random play on words there.
Oops, I didn't. I genuinely didn't think of that when I was annotating it.
Now that's double entendre of the episode, isn't it?
I think that must now be quadruple entendre because it's happened twice over.
Remember Deborah, Mark, and Claire, whose dungeoneer had disappeared? Well, they're gone, you may have heard, because their friend was not a bird. Now this is Leo and his men. From Kent, they journeyed to my den. And despite the fact they missed a clue, they made it still to level 2. The chalice is the quest they seek. A creature's here, so let it speak.
So Claire disappeared. That's fallen out of the gate, hasn't it? Herd birds is okay, but not difficult. Men den, again, okay, but not difficult. Clue and two, too easy. And seek and speak. It's not too bad. I mean, it's only got one, which is one particularly bad rhyme in it, but it's just that the ones they've got right aren't difficult to do.
Do you remember when you used to say that you liked the Dungeon Ditties?
No. There was no such time, I've realised. David, did you like the Dungeon Ditties that Hugo would start the programme with, or did you never really pick up on them?
I never really picked up on it, but I do remember Hugo very well. Obviously, I see him reasonably often. I remember going into Studio E and he was just beckoning me away, and everybody else was learning his lines. It came out since that it was really important, the script, and it had to be right first time. They had to treat it as if it was a live show. Because imagine, they fluffed the question and said, right, cut, retake. Well, the kids would know exactly what was coming up and what the real answer was. So it had to be done live. It was one take and that was it. And they had to learn every scenario, every possible answer, and the outcomes for each answer.
Yep.
So it was pretty crucial.
Looking at the Dungeon Ditty, I'd say the later lines are pretty tidy, but that opener, it's close to redemption, but it's failed, that one, sorry.
All inaction is condemned. All folly is without purpose. When faced with death, you must go left, or you from life will be bereft. Whimsy are the borogoves. All is lost until found. The third step is the bow. The next, the wizard. The wonderful Wizard of Oz. Because...
Go on with the helmet, Leo. The oracle has descended into drivel. Still, let's hope you've managed to separate the chaff from the wheat, so to speak.
We left Leo and his friends Matthew, Simon and James in the level 2 clue room. The ghostly oracle of confusion is present, played to near perfection by Zoe Loftin.
Not knocking Zoe here, but I don't think it requires much in the way of acting chops to get the oracle right. It's a bit like the Terminator. You're probably better off going with someone who can't act and therefore has no danger of veering away from the necessary monotone, if you know.
Are you saying that Zoe Loftin can't act?
I'm not making. I was commentating on the Terminator there.
Diggers are good at digging, scooping up the earth and the lifting and tipping. They make huge holes with their digging. They can work all day.
But no, serious point. Basically the oracle basically just has to say everything in a monotone, so it's not difficult to play it to perfection. And if you can play it to perfection, that may not suggest great things about your acting elasticity, shall we say.
They make huge holes with their digging. They can work all day.
So if I remember rightly, the oracle is the only part in Nightmare that was recast. She was played by Audrey Jenkinson in season 2.
The way they get around it is it's not the oracle, is it?
An oracle of confusion.
Some invaluable clues here, but whether the team picked up on them all remains to be seen. With nothing on the altar to be taken, the team guide Leo out of the room. Now, this is one of our favourite rooms.
Yes, the ideal location for haunting, and that certainly comes across here, let's face it.
I did the rough for that room, and I did curved staircase coming down to the centre each side.
Oh, wow.
And Tim said to me, yeah, looks great, but that would probably use our entire production budget to make that. Right, I got it. And obviously I had to take into account the blue mat for the table.
We often see hauntings in that clue room. It was the first appearance of Mogdred. It was the first appearance of Audrus. Was it deliberately drawn to have hauntings, or was that just a decision that Tim made after he already had it?
I think he would have found those uses for it.
Okay, forward. Where am I?
Right, you're in a long sort of corridor, and there are doors down each side, and there's a person in front of you.
Emergency team, goblins hunting in level 2, out fast. There's no reasoning with them.
Okay,
Left.
forward, Leo.
Oh yes, it's the great corridor of the catacombs. Oh, what's an adventure to do? And we're all focused on level 2.
So there are goblins in the corridor today, but they don't pose much of an issue. Heeding the oracle's advice, Leo exits to the left.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those goblins are video footage taken earlier and then pasted into the scene. It happens quite a bit.
It is an impressive room.
It gives an impression of depth which isn't really there.
I had to extrapolate the grid backwards and build it again. Quite easily to do just with diagonals, and I had to build it to that new grid. But we all understood where we were going, and everyone knew how to use it. So
Side step to your left.
Left?
Yeah.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a room, and to the right of you, there's the floor's just missing and there's space.
Right.
And then...
Your last step was well taken, team. If you had not turned left when faced with death, as the Oracle advised, I rather fancy you wouldn't be here. But now that you are, there are other steps to be taken. I wonder if you remember which they are, and what action to take.
The team have made it to Merlin's throne room, arriving from the front of the room rather than through the left doorway, which is unusual. So they could actually have left using the left door rather than crossing the pit, although I doubt any good would have come of it. The team guide Leo to the edge of the precipice, but aren't quite sure how to invoke the steps.
Say dance. Perhaps I should sit on the chair or something.
Yeah, but there's a space between you and the chair.
Okay.
Say dance. You reckon you should say dance?
Okay. Dance.
Right.
David, did you prefer this throne room for Merlin or the Hall of Folly, that library from seasons 1 and 2?
What I remember about that's called the Merlin room.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one with the throne. That got superseded. There was a Merlin room too, and that was because they wanted to incorporate that puzzle with the hole in the floor.
So which version did you prefer, if either?
I quite like the background with the throne.
I think this room looks more spectacular, but I think the original version looks more appropriate for a sort of a scholarly wizard, so to speak.
I did enjoy doing all the books and the little glass flasks and so on. That was just because I was pushing technique. I was really enjoying what I was doing.
Has anything happened?
What
No.
action to take?
Oh, Leo.
Yeah.
Do you reckon you should do a dance?
After the extra clue from Tregard, Leo does a little jig. He gets a bit over-enthusiastic and almost dances right into the pit. Had the flagstone not appeared in front of him just in time, we might have been saying goodbye to this team rather sooner than expected.
It's one of those embarrassing step clues that pop up from time to time. We had happy birthday, didn't we? But I'm not entirely sure what Leo is doing counts as dancing. He just seems to be skipping on the spot. But either way, I'm sure he got teased mercilessly at school for months afterwards.
1 second, my wife's just come in.
All right, okay.
My
He's
wife,
under the thumb. He's under the thumb. He's under the thumb. He's under the thumb. He's under the thumb.
I told her that we were going to have David Rowe on the podcast, and she was less interested on the fact that you did the rooms for Nightmare than she was on the fact you did James Pond 2.
That was for Millennium. I enjoyed that because I had to combine RoboCop and James Bond into a fish, which they had all sorts of different people doing.
Oh,
You can't see.
RoboCop images. Hello. And I said, look, you've got to be consistent. You're having different James Ponds all over the place. And so they picked this young lady to do the illustrations in future, which is great fun. And I've seen that RoboCop copied lots of times.
Yeah, there's like a sort of almost CGI version, isn't there, floating about?
But anyway, I had real fun doing that.
You always seem to love your work. My job's a bloody nightmare, appropriately enough.
Stop. Yeah, okay, Leo, stop. The steps appeared. Right. Now,
you want to say a prayer?
Anyway, the next step is the prayer, which Leo mimes, and the next flagstone appears.
Yeah, another one's appeared. Go forward.
All right,
Step slightly right.
Yeah, side step slow. No, you're all right. Go forward, Leo, slowly.
Slowly.
Yeah, okay, keep on going. Stop.
The thing is that in 1967, when I was 17, and I wouldn't swap that for anything, it was a great time to be 17. I was being guided by, very well-meaning parents into joining a pathology lab in Southampton and taking HND and doing all that sort of thing. Well, I just thought, I don't want to do that. So
Good on you.
I went out of sciences and into arts and left home, school all at the same time. moved in with my charming wife.
Bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heaven.
Yeah, but then people thought, what am I, I've got one life, what am I here to do? And I know it's absolutely anything I bloody well want.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
I think it turned out beautifully.
Right, now you've got to...
Bow.
Yeah.
So the next one's the bow, which Leo performs. It's not a very difficult one, that one. And Merlin mercifully appears and puts him out of his misery.
Stop, Leo.
About time, too, if I may say so. Dragon's flight. Well, I get cramped waiting around like this. What's more, I forget what I'm waiting for. What am I waiting for, Dungeon Master?
With respect, sir, it is the quest, if you recall, the moment of testing.
Have you noticed that this whole sequence is strangely similar to some of the puzzles at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? That moment when he's bowing, it's almost exactly like the same as when Jones has to bow his head in humility to avoid being decapitated. They were both made in 1989. I'm suspicious. I think Spielberg and Lucas borrowed that from Nightmare.
I did a meme a while back with Indiana Jones in the four-doored chamber, where Dungeoneers would have to spell open, only this time he had to spell Jehovah. And to remember whether it started with a Y or not.
That would probably have been even funnier if it had been Team 7 from Season 2, actually.
Latin alphabet starts with Y.
Testing! Yes, right, Leo. It is Leo, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, first let's perk you up a bit. Spellcasting! Energy! E. N. E. R. G. Y. There.
Merlin really drags out the spell this time. It almost sounds like he's forgotten how to spell energy, and you almost expect the life force clock to actually run out halfway through casting it. I do sometimes think, and I know I'm not the first KM fan to say this, I do sometimes think John Woodner was just trying to keep the camera on himself a little too much sometimes.
And the first question is,
which playing card has the largest symbol of all the pack? Do you know the answer, David?
Yeah, it's got to be the spades, isn't it? It's always the big card.
The ace of spades.
The ace of spades! The ace of spades!
Truth accepted. Interestingly, Merlin seems to take the answer from one of the team rather than from Leo. What was the nationality of the first marathon runner?
I know, it's all Greek to me.
Correct. A supplementary question. This wasn't in the programme. Do you know what his name was?
Wilf.
Yeah, that sounds like an ancient Greek name to me. Yes.
In other words, no.
Do you know, Mr. 8?
No, I'm sure you're going to tell us all.
A lot of people think that his actual name was Marathon, but that's untrue. That was the name of the battle that he was couriering to and from. His actual name was Pheidippides.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe!
Anyway, the team score 2, and Merlin gives them the spell sword, warning them that offensive spells such as this should be used defensively.
Now, off you go, and onward with your quest.
Merlin disappears, and the team guide Leo out through the usual exit.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a cave, and hanging down from the top, there's 2 spikes, and then in front of you, there seems to be like a huge frog.
Well, now, a threat, perhaps? Or perhaps not. It's for you to decide, team.
On to Death Valley.
Do you actually remember what this was going to be called?
What was that called? I know I had to tie all the 3 rooms together, so they were done as a set, to be sure.
I lent my copy of your book to someone else, so I don't have it to hand.
I could have had a copy of that to hand. It would have been useful, wouldn't it? Yeah, I shifted 5 of those over Christmas. I don't make anything on them. I have to drive 8 miles to get there and back to the post office.
Oh, you sell them directly?
Well, the publisher on request will send me some, and I just ship them out as the orders come in.
Oh, I see.
Oh, cool.
It trickles. It's not huge, but if people want them, they should have them. Really
good principle.
If I remember rightly, I think it was just referred to in the book as Cave.
I remember the other triptych was the Vale of Banburn.
Yeah.
Hugo had an interesting anecdote about those that fell off the cliff, and he came up with "ooh, nasty" because of the amount of time it took them to get to the ground and to fill it.
Oh, I wish we'd known that when we spoke to him.
something to cover the awkward gap. Interesting enough, on this occasion, Death Valley, if that's what it is, the mouth of the cave is entirely filled up by the image of a giant toad instead of the image of a valley, making it even less of a Death Valley than before. Leo sort of is trying to make friends with it.
That's quite amicable.
It doesn't actually need to be dangerous or anything. He's just got this rather silly sound effect going on in the background. I am slightly bewildered by this scene. I don't know if it's meant to be a sort of you remember that level 1 creature in season 2 that was peering through a ruined wall in level 1?
Yeah.
And would occasionally blink and do absolutely nothing else. I just don't see the point of having the toad in there.
Probably just something different.
If you're not going to have a threat, why bother? Just leave the valley there and there's still a danger of falling off.
Well, it might have been a way of making it clearer that you can't go that way.
I suppose that's possible. What would be interesting is if they did still walk over the edge, how do you animate that?
All right, no, yeah, forward, please, Leah.
Are we going to make contact?
No. Well, should we try once more?
Yeah, try.
Try once more.
So, what, do I just say something?
Yeah, just try and...
Hello, can you hear me?
No, all right,
I
let's
don't
go.
think anything happened.
Okay, walk forward, Leah.
Come on, team, you're wasting life force.
Side step left, Leah.
The team try one more time to communicate with the toad, but eventually they decide to ignore it and move on.
On to the next part of the cave system. The toad can still be heard croaking away. Above the stone platform is a piece of the chalice, which Leo climbs up to retrieve.
Quick,
Warning,
Leah.
team, a goblin horn by the sound of it.
Okay, quick,
Hurry,
Leah.
Got it?
Yep. Go forward, Leah.
What?
Turn around completely.
Come down.
Come down, Leo.
Remember what I said previously about me calling these the Dream Cavern? I took the name from the book from that year. One of the reasons why I call them the Dream Caverns is because they're a sequence of caverns. It's not just one cavern. So it sort of works as a selection to call them that. But I realise that's not an official explanation.
With the goblins in pursuit, Leo moves swiftly through the third and final section of the caves and into a dwarf tunnel.
Okay, get on going. Forward. Yeah, side step to your left. Yeah? Do you reckon? Yeah, and again. Quick, and forward, quick.
Well, they're a good team, this bunch, and they're moving pretty well. There's just occasions when they need prompted to do something very, very obvious, but they're quite a fluid team, I think.
Where am I?
Right, you're standing on a bridge over a great big chasm.
Yeah.
And on the bridge in front of you, there is some food.
Food.
Okay, Leo. Do you want to go forward slowly?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. There's a
Stop.
ranger here.
You really cannot pass, you know. Not before someone of higher breeding such as myself. No. You'll just have to go back. Or perhaps go down.
Caution, team. This is an encounter with one who has many names. The druids, however, called him Hordris the Confuser. He is neither specifically on the light side nor the dark side. I would say instead he is a distinct shade of dark grey and should be taken very seriously. You must find some way to impress him, for if he senses weakness, he could turn nasty.
So Leo emerges into the Vale of Mogdred. There's some food here, which the team move Leo towards. But before we can get to it, we get the first proper appearance of a white man in a deep red cloak as he materializes in front of them. This is the first appearance proper of Hordris the Confuser, played with incredibly croaky haughtiness by Clifford Norgate. That croaky voice is perfect for what Hordris was originally. Unfortunately, he was another character who got softened as the years passed, but here he's something pretty good, and it's, well, actually pretty good and bad. He's a lot more menacing at this time.
In his early appearance, Hordris was very much a chaotic, neutral character.
Yeah.
If he felt he could benefit from you, then he'd be a powerful ally, and if not, then you were just in his way.
The lack of edge to his character later on gets quite frustrating, but here, he's not actually evil, as Tregard specifies, but he's capable of doing evil things.
Leo makes no attempt to move out of the way. Hordris takes this as an affront to his dignity and tells Leo to prepare to meet his end. Bolstered by his teammates, Leo tells Hordris that he's not frightened by him. This doesn't faze Hordris, who begins to summon something from the depths of the Vale. What it is he is summoning we never find out, as the team defend themselves using the tools they have to hand.
Go.
spellcasting.
Rise, please.
SWORD.
Hordris actually says rise, please, which seems to indicate to me that he was summoning up some magic to lift Leo off the bridge, but it might be something he's summoning up from the depths.
Yeah, I took it to mean that he was summoning some kind of monster.
It would be a lot easier just to push him off the bridge, you know.
Yeah, but this is Hordris. It's got to be all grandiose and theatrical.
Over-dramatic, yeah.
The Veil of Mogdred itself is quite, I hesitate to say basic design, but a basic function, I'd say.
Yeah, the 3 crossing rooms had the same function. It was just walking across left to right, usually.
As well, that bridge was in a straight line. There's a bridge in level 3 this season, which definitely isn't.
I wanted to ask you, actually, because we don't get it in this episode. One of the crossings in level 1, there's some markings on the walls, and a lot of the time Dungeoneers try and check them out, and then they're just hurried along by Treguard, and they don't seem to have any bearing on the quest. I was wondering if those markings were at one point supposed to be used for a puzzle or something.
I don't think so. Not the great answer, is it?
It's the ledge caverns in level 1. There's some Roman numerals appearing on one extension of it. We've often wondered if there was ever any significance to them.
No, they were never meant for anything. I think this was chopped and extended somewhat as well. As far as doing the artwork from these are concerned, you can see the technique I employed, which was that printing of complete randomness and mess, and then working in with shaping features with brush, and then scraping highlights just to lift the effect, and then going into the acrylic with a typewriter rubber to actually soften and bring up highlights and points. Kind of worked, I think.
Typewriter rubber.
They're very hard to get hold of now. I try because I still do some artwork.
They would be, yeah. Around the time Nightmare was starting, my mum got her first ever electronic typewriter, and she was really scared of it. She thought, this is really advanced technology. I could blow up the planet with this thing.
Oh, well, there's really no need to take that sort of attitude, you know. If you really feel that strongly about it, then I'm quite happy to withdraw. My respects to you, sir. The path is all yours.
A sword haunting appears in front of Hordris, which seems to rile him up a little. Hordris fades away, and Treguard warns the team that they must dispel before the magic turns on them.
Spell DWORS.
Okay, Leo, you're fine now.
This is quite important for this quest, isn't it? For this team.
Yes.
Because this is teaching them something that they will require later.
Yes, it is. Halfway through level 3. They did need a lot of prompting in this scene, I should say. I think they were desperate not to use the sword spell so soon after getting it. But they do learn the importance of how to dispel magic.
The sword vanishes, leaving the path clear. Leo takes the food and knapsacks it before exiting.
Right, walk forward.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a room, and there's lots of holes in the walls and the floor.
Yeah.
And then there are these arrows, and they're chopping in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
In and out.
And then there's a ghost.
There's a ghost.
Now, we had a bit of a disagreement for the Hall of Spears, didn't we? Because you always claimed it was the Corridor of Spears, and I said it was the Hall of Spears. But according to your book, David, we're both wrong. It's Spears Room.
Well, they were kind of given names at the time.
What my wife actually calls this room is the lots of stabby things coming out of the walls room. This was one of the chambers that was extensively redesigned between series 1 and 2.
This room must have been done with computer graphics. So they just used the basic room that I did and retinted it and cut the blocks out.
So you didn't really have to get involved in that process.
The bricks and the depth of them look like I would have done that, but I'm pretty sure I didn't.
How about the Scorpion Room? They removed flagstones from that as well. In Series 1, there was a section of safe path that they could walk through without risking getting caught by the Scorpion's sting. And then in Series 3, that was taken away by removing flagstones from the floor.
Again, that would have been down to CGI, travelling back.
I'm pretty sure that would have been Tim Child himself saying that, because he didn't want his gameplay to get too easy.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they could adjust it, and they did.
That's slightly disappointing in a way. I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to go over them again. But I have to admit, what they've done with this one looks spectacular.
Yes, that's quite good. They also did the Scarab Room, which was one of my rooms, and they just took the right half and flipped it to make a symmetrical left half. I thought that was quite good because they had classic movie lighting of blue and orange with the flaming torches. And yeah, I thought that worked well.
As we said many times before, and here we're backed up by one of the advisors, the Hall of Spears is essentially a timing exercise. They guide Leo past the first set of spears, although I reckon that it definitely gets his ankle at one point.
I don't think so. They do get past the first pair, but only just. It's a pity that Leo stopped exactly where he did, though, because he still managed to remain superimposed above the spear's image, and that's what gives the impression of his ankle being stabbed. But he is actually just beyond that. He does get away with it on the second set of spears, though.
I did a sheet of weapons, including the spears, which they could just lift off.
So they could basically slot them in anywhere. Is that where some of the hauntings came from?
Yeah.
It's like those transfers that you used to get by penciling over the sheet and it transferred the image onto whatever you were transferring it to.
Yeah, there was the cornflakes packets where you'd have transfers. You have an image on the back and you rub them down, and they were never in perspective. They're never correct.
Never.
They looked awful.
Yeah.
There's Tim Child bringing discipline to that procedure with this idea of grids.
Tim Child does not get the credit he deserves for saving the world.
Transfer king.
Yeah.
Right, when we say go, run. Go!
He gets past the second set of spears, although, as you say, he does seem to get caught by them.
But they just go through the exit.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a sort of cave, and there's a mine.
Hello, helmet face. I should say you've about reached the end of your level, you have. All banged up and nowheres to go.
And we reach a mine chamber. Not a mind chamber, a mine chamber. This was Bumptious's home in season 2, but it's now the way out of level 2 and into level 3.
Has this been reworked?
I seem to remember in season 2, on at least one occasion, the minecart appeared to be just drawn in, whereas we have a physical minecart in season 3. I may be remembering that wrong.
Yeah, the additional props here are the minecart and the figure, obviously.
So you never had to draw the minecart, so I am remembering that wrong then. As I said, I'm getting old. I'm heading into my late 40s. I'm old.
You're okay. I've got old.
Yeah, but you're remembering things better than I am.
I don't know why I walked into this room.
Did you walk in and say, where am I? Standing by the mine, everybody's favourite jester, Motley.
I shall treat that suggestion with the contempt it deserves. Nothing against Paul Valentine, but a lot against Motley.
Tried walking through the tunnel, have you? Won't work, you see. There's a force field across it. Go on, try it if you like.
Very little is given out for free in the dungeon, and Motley offers Leo a deal. If Leo can tell Motley a joke he hasn't heard before, he'll help him pass through the force field. Since Motley wouldn't know a joke if it slapped him in the face, this should be pretty easy. But then again...
You listening to this? What's the difference between a crazy rabbit and counterfeit money?
Yeah, and what's the answer?
One's a mad bunny and the other's bad money.
Right, go.
We'll say that again. What's the difference?
What's the difference between a crazy rabbit and counterfeit money?
What's the difference between crazy money and a counterfeit?
Crazy rabbit and a counterfeit
come on,
money.
get it right.
What's
This
the
is a
difference between
professional.
a crazy rabbit and counterfeit money?
This is actually a feature that happens quite a lot over seasons 3 and 4. Motley, the self-proclaimed professional all-round entertainer, keeps on asking passers-by to tell him jokes to use in his routines. I'm not sure this says a great deal for his professionalism. It's consistent with how bad a jester he is, but at the same time, it isn't consistent with his claim to being a professional.
Leo messes up the joke and has to repeat it. He gives it another go, and this time it's Motley's turn to mess it up.
What's the difference between a professional rabbit and counterfeit money?
A crazy rabbit.
A crazy rabbit and counterfeit money?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And once again...
What is it?
One is a mad bunny.
One is a mad bunny.
And the other is bad money.
And the other is bad money.
For some reason, I can't imagine why, this joke didn't seem to work. But let's be fair, it's still funnier than anything Motley will ever come up with.
As we say, we really like Paul Valentine. And I quite like Motley.
I really, really love Paul Valentine's performances as Sylvester Hands. I must stress that. So I'm not in any way having a go at Paul Valentine. But Motley, he just gets up my nose because his jokes are always so bad.
Right. I want you to step up here, up there, your leg over, and bosh, you're in.
Bosh, you're in. Bosh.
Right. Get ready for the ride of your life. All right? You hanging on tight? 'Cause here goes. Whee!
The mine tunnel is by far and away the greatest method of travelling between levels that Nightmare ever had. It is genuinely exciting and puts the wellway in its place.
I'm glad they put that in because it replaced something that really didn't work for me before.
It certainly didn't help you were using them for both changes of level in the first 2 seasons. It's okay to do it for one, I suppose, but if you're going to use it for 2 of them, it really slows everything down.
Yeah, it was getting a bit stale. It still looks good today because it's moving on at such a pace that if there are any iffy bits, you don't notice them.
They're behind you before you actually notice them. No specific detail ever completely registers with you. Everything's just rushing past, which again helps to contribute to the idea of moving at speed.
The minecart ride really doffs a hat to Indiana Jones yet again, doesn't it?
It does.
Oh yeah, of course.
Does, yeah.
No matter how exciting it is, though, if you listen to this team describing what's going on,
yes.
You're in a train tunnel. You're moving really fast.
Well, obviously they weren't.
Hold on tight and keep your head down, Leo. The rest of you better warn him what's going on.
Right, Leo, you're going down a train tunnel, and it's like a mining shaft. And you're in the sort of truck going along. And all along there's lights lighting up the tunnel. And there's sort of lumps of rock on the floor and things.
Okay.
And you can't sort of see any end. No.
But I'd say maximum kudos to whoever designed it and animated it, because it is brilliant. It is the best thing. It's such a shame it was only used in 1 season, actually.
Yeah.
I think they could easily have found a way to use it again in season 4, even if it would have to look a bit different. They could have painted it purple. On the subject of season 4, what did you think of the purple architecture? Did you think it was Did you think that was a mistake, or were you happy with it?
I think the idea was to try and make it look otherworldly, but it doesn't really work.
Yeah, the videos were treated, weren't they, in that way?
Yeah.
In purple. I wasn't so hooked on watching it from that point, really. But it wasn't a fit of pique on my part because they weren't really using my rooms. It really wasn't. But
I always found everything about season 4 way, way, way too repetitive. When it gets to the point where even the colour scheme in almost every chamber is exactly the same, somebody's made a fundamental mistake there. It doesn't really matter who's actually put the rooms together. It just doesn't look right if it's all the same colour.
Yeah.
Hold on, Leo. It can't be much further. Oh no, brace yourself for a crash, Leo. The end of the tunnel's coming up, but the cart just won't slow down.
Where am I? Right, you're in this sort of funny room, and there's these 2 doors on the wall to the left of you, and some bones.
Well, congratulations, all of you. Leo has made it to level 3 and is still in one piece. Now, before you move off, let me tell you a little about this level. Cavern wights can be found here, as well as goblins and even hobgoblins. It's also haunted, though we don't know by what. In fact, from this point on, you can expect the opposition to get a lot tougher. So now I'd advise you to get Leo moving.
I've not seen that image before of the skeleton room. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's this one is, I think, from series 1.
That image, yeah.
Yeah.
You got the extra bits of bone and what have you superimposed over the top of it there.
The centre skeleton was actually painted on in the original, and they've just lifted bits and pieces. And that's quite good, actually.
At certain points, that skeleton would suddenly reassemble itself and stand up.
Oh my word!
But anyway, Leo has landed in the new recoloured skeleton room. It's the usual opening room of level 3, although they got there by a completely different route. It's the first time we've seen level 3 in season 3, though. The room is devoid of skeletons this time, save for one hanging from the back wall and some loose bones strewn across the floor again. You're just waiting for it to jump up, but they don't. What I'm not so fond of here is they've recoloured it with a kind of yellowish glaze. I'm not sure that works quite as well. The blue aura of the first 2 seasons was more chilling. It was like moonlight, whereas this new coloration looks like sunlight, and it's sort of brightens things up instead. I don't think that's what you want for level 3.
I still think it's an excellent design. David, what was your brief for this chamber? Do you remember?
No, I can't offhand.
I would be amazed if you could, actually, because not just because it was 35 years ago, but also you're having to do it in that compression of 3 weeks.
But it was again just you'd have to look underneath all the overlays to see the room that I did.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed doing the skeleton. At that time, doing computer games, it was very much for guys in their bedrooms and small companies. And you could be really tongue-in-cheek and have a bit of a laugh, really. It then went really corporate, so it was a much more serious business. And you couldn't have that whimsy. I remember doing one for Quicksilver, and it was called Fred. And the character at the front was an Indiana Jones type. And that was Rod Cousins, who was the MD of the company in a small little tenement in Southampton. And then I put a couple of the other people as the vampires and ghouls, and it was always like that. You're just having a laugh, really.
That's the thing I always loathe about it when it gets corporate, though, isn't it? Because it loses its ability to take chances. Had Anglia Television been in a really corporate mood in the mid-80s, it wouldn't have let him create Nightmare in the first place.
No, that's true.
Getting corporate basically means becoming formulaic, and it's such a shame when they do that, because the ability to improvise just goes out the window.
Tim had quite a lot of problem getting that accepted and the pilot made, and he took a lot of risks. I know he was always working at the authorities there to have a pilot made, particularly for Nightmare. He was an avid adventure gamer, and remember Melbourne House did Lord of the Rings, I think, and The Hobbit. And it was basically 2-color, very simple, flat graphics, if there was any at all, or it was all text. And his idea was to use computer graphics and get it onto TV. And I think, given the tech at the time, what he did was absolutely amazing.
Okay, Leo, step forward.
Should we go to the right?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Side step to your left.
There's loads of bones and stuff on the floor.
Right. And walk forward quickly, Leo.
Beware the cold ones can seriously damage your life force.
The appearance of the haunting does fluster the team a little, but they soon regain their composure and guide their dungeoneer through the right-hand exit.
Got to admit something now. This is going to make me sound like a complete wuss. Those hauntings back in 1989 really, genuinely terrified me. I was so scared, and I have no idea why watching them back now, but those things, the noise they made, and the strange shimmering effect, I was terrified of them.
Turn around to your left. Walk forward.
Where am I?
Right, you're in this cave, and there are some monsters in front of you. Cavern Whites in front of you.
Yeah. Is there any?
Yes, Cavern Whites. But they have fed and are now sleepy. You remember they're blind but can hunt you by smell. They're also quite deadly. Make no more noise than you have to, Leo.
So I'm assuming by this that Cavern Whites are no longer canonically deaf.
It's not completely consistent. Traeger doesn't say anything that specifically contradicts it here either, though.
He tells them not to make a sound.
It's never been completely consistent. What is of interest for me is that to portray the sound of the Cavern White snoring, you listen very carefully, you realise it's the sound effect of the catacomb bite being used on low volume.
So this chamber looks very similar to the previous chamber. Is this a case of them reusing the artwork?
No, this was a completely new room, new painting.
Oh,
right. Okay.
And,
okay.
all the driftwood in the left door is painted.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah,
I thought that was
everything about that's painted, obviously, except for the characters.
I stand corrected. I apologise.
Well, don't apologise. It's kind of flattering, you think about it. The painting's so convincing that it looks like it's real.
I remember doing the tide lines on the floor, for retreating waves, because the sea would have come in.
I rather like the way that the room is used in this particular scene, because rather than the dungeon just getting one target in the room to go for, on this occasion it's got targets on opposite sides of the room, and he has to get both of them.
Yeah.
There's an energy sprig on the right, which he needs because his life force is getting low, but there's a quest piece on the left side of the room that he also needs, because otherwise he'll lose the game. So he has to go past one of the whites on the left-hand side to get the quest piece, retreat, sidestep all the way across the room, and then walk forward to get the energy sprig, and then sort of weave around the other Cavern White to get to the exit. So they've actually made it into a bit of a challenge for once, this room. Previous uses of the room have been a bit straightforward.
Okay, yeah.
Are there any trees or?
Yeah, but Leo, there's a chalice on the left, so we get that.
Okay.
They guide him slowly and carefully to the chalice piece. He passes close to one of the lights, causing it to wake up. Before the creature can catch him, the advisors guide Leo out of danger, then bring him over to the energy tree, restoring his life force, and maneuver him through the door on the right.
New sound effect for the energy sprig. I'm not sure why they changed it from the old one. I thought the old one was fine.
Okay, sidestep to your right, quick, Leo. Quick, Leo, quick, Leo, quick, Leo, quick, Leo.
Forward, quick.
Stop. Forward, Leo. Oh, nice. Stop, Leo. Quick. Oh, now hang on. Okay, back, Leo. Side back. Okay, forwards, Leo, forwards. Sidestep to your left. Forwards.
Right, you're in this stone room.
Are there any dangers?
No, there aren't.
Okay.
No. And in front of you, there's a door.
Yeah.
And to the right of that, just before it, is a table with an M on it.
Okay, shall we go?
Yeah, okay. Sidestep to your right, Leo.
And they arrive in Jericho's 6 chamber without the CGI wall that often appears. I actually don't think the CGI wall appears in season 3 at all. Not only is the wall now absent, but the steps that used to lead up to the opening at the back are gone as well, making the entrance appear bigger and grander.
Do we know why the steps have gone?
They were actually removed for Julian's quest in season 2 as well. They'd actually gone in the previous season.
Oh, okay.
I suspect they just decided the steps were slowing down exit from the room.
David, did you have to draw it without steps a second time, or they were just removed?
That had to be removed by computer graphics, the steps. That wouldn't have been difficult to do, I'm sure, even then. I really don't recall adding steps at all or removing them.
Merlin's emblem, the big yellow letter M, sits upon the table, and Leo moves towards it.
Oh, the sword appeared.
Beware, this magic is Mogred's work.
Quick, should we get out?
No, get the M.
Oh, go.
The teams start panicking, but then they remember this is where things carry over from level 2. So it's a rare example of direct consistency between level 2 and 3 because they tended to be scripted completely separately. But they remember how they dealt with the last sword that caused them some bother, and they just dispel it the same way.
Spell D-W-O-R-S.
I don't think it's working. Yes.
Brilliant.
And with the chamber now clear of obstacles, they are able to collect the emblem.
If I remember rightly, this is the only scene in Nightmare history to feature both Mogred and Merlin, sort of, although Mogred is only portrayed by his disembodied laugh. It's the only one to portray them both in the same scene.
Right, and put your hand out. Okay,
Yep,
we've got it.
Oh, well done, Leo. This is pretty promising, you know. We tend to lose a lot of you young people by this stage. Of course, we don't want you getting overconfident. To help you cope, I will gift you 2 spells. Food is short in level 3, so I gift you the spell Energy. And to gain you time, I gift you the spell Grip. But it lasts for only a short time. Now, onward towards your goal.
All right, Leo, walk straight, sidestep to your left and walk forward.
Right, Leo, you seem to be travelling through this stomach or something.
Yeah, an inside of a giant stomach or something. And you're going through a long pipe with blood vessels and...
Skulls, I think.
Skulls and things like that.
Yeah.
Skulls in the walls.
Yeah.
And into the stomach tunnel.
Basically, we seem to be walking down a monster's gullet.
It is quite effective.
It's certainly very striking. And of course, it has to end on a really loud belching sound.
So did they literally just take the original room and wrap it round in a tunnel?
Or pieces of it. The original room, it's I did say that that they didn't have the geometry obvious, which you get in all the rooms, because it was so amorphous. So I had to do that overlay to fax up to them quickly so they could line it all up. Very important thing in the stomach room was the mat that they used to conceal the slide that the Dungeoneer came down into the stomach room. And it worked really well because it was very accurate. So, you know, bits of him would disappear behind different undulations.
The slide effect's actually very good for that, I think.
I think I've still got an old VHS video of some of the pilot where the floor manager is actually walking across to a blue tube and climbs into it and when I saw them climbing into the well, I just thought it was unbelievable. But the fun part of that was the floor manager had blue jeans on, so he was legless, totally legless in the pilot. That's funny.
Legless? I didn't touch a drop.
Where am I? Right. You're in a large room, and on the floor there's a mosaic, and in front
Dire
of you...
warning, team, there's no way past the Medusa without being turned to stone.
Okay, this is one of the greatest dungeon chambers of all, and sadly we only saw it I think 3 times. The Medusa, and because she's been established as so powerful in season 2, as soon as you see the audience is just filled with dread.
So how much of this was your design, David?
Very little on that one. They've used obviously the floor and overlaid it with the rug, so very, very little, if any. In all the rooms I did, they had a lot of components to be able to cut and paste.
So were they basically allowed to do what they wanted with each room?
Yeah, best I could manage was keep ownership of all the originals.
Was there any of the rooms that they did something with that you didn't really expect?
I suppose quite a few of the ones I thought they fiddled with that. Yeah, maybe it's something I felt I could have done, but they had their brief as well, so it's fair.
When I saw this in 1989, I was completely terrified at this moment and thinking the quest is going to end here.
Yeah,
because they haven't got the shields. They never even got the chance to take a shield. That's not fair. They haven't even had a level 3 clue room yet. I'd completely forgotten that Merlin had just given them a couple of spells, which meant that they must have had an option to try and deal with her another way. And of course they did.
Miss Medusa, do you reckon we should spellcast Leo? Great.
Well, what's... Yeah.
There's a chalice.
Yeah.
Spellcasting. G-R-I-P.
All right, that's given her a taste of her own medicine. But remember what Merlin said, this magic is only temporary.
Okay, sidestep left, Leo, quick.
the spell lasts mere seconds, but it's long enough for the team to make good their escape.
I rather like the way Treguard says that's given her a taste of her own medicine. On this occasion, she's the one frozen solid by the grip spell.
And put your hand up in the air. Oh, jerk. Oh, sidestep left. Put it down, Leo, and go forward. It's all right. You can put it down now.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a large room, and there's a gargoyle to your left.
Okay.
And there's also a door past him.
Oh, dear, an intruder. Give your name, intruder.
Leo.
And the object of your quest?
Leo, we're searching for a chalice.
The Gargoyles have also undergone a slight redesign this series and have adopted the same Synchrovox effects as the level 1 War Monsters. Appropriate, really, as this particular unnamed gargoyle fulfills essentially the same function as a War Monster. Am I right in thinking you did the faces of the gargoyles?
Yes, I did.
Were they based on anyone in particular?
Kind of reminded me a bit of one of my art school tutors, Raymond Brigg, who did Fungus the Bogeyman and Father Christmas.
Oh, Raymond Briggs, yes, of course.
He was often quite dour.
So it's actually based on Raymond Briggs?
Well, only from memory. You know, it kind of reminded me of him a bit.
That's a nice little bit of trivia there.
Hooded eyes. Did Raymond Briggs literally have eyes sort of almost hanging out of their sockets in despair?
Only occasionally. No.
Leo, listen.
On Salisbury Plain long years ago. I actually think I preferred Mug's voice. Men raised a ring of standing stones. Stonehenge it's called. But where is found the largest ring on English ground?
This is quite a difficult one for a team of that age.
It's also difficult for you because you got the name wrong when you wrote the script.
Did I?
You did, yeah. You said Aylesbury. It's actually Avebury.
Oh, okay.
Avebury is quite a famous touristy spot, famous for its stone circle. But as you say, not every school kid's going to be aware of it.
Isn't it where they filmed Children of the Stone?
I think it was, yeah. That was the thing that Gareth Thomas was in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Certainly, it was at a stone ring.
That was frightening, that show.
I keep trying to get the DVD of it. It was a really good show, that. I'd say very good for Nightmare fans as well.
Do you know, Leo?
No idea.
No.
An answer, Leo, now.
Just try again.
An answer now.
You haven't got an answer, Leo.
Haven't got one.
The answer I wanted was Avebury. Peril is the reward of ignorance.
But not only did a team not get the answer right, they don't even attempt it.
There's all sorts of things they could have tried. They could have said something like Circleville or something. Even that's better than just saying, I don't know, the North Circular Road. So if you think about it, That's actually a legitimate answer, the North Circular Road, because all it's saying is what's the largest ring on English ground? It doesn't specify it has to be a ring created during the Stone Age or anything.
That's true.
Picture the wall monster, the gargoyles saying, "Oh yeah."
Oh dear. Oh dear.
You'll learn nothing else from this creature, I fear. Hurry, for it could even turn hostile.
They're getting very, very close to the end of level 3, though. Can they make it without the gargoyles' help? Now, here is something which I want to point out seems slightly perverse. The next room is the 7th room. There's 7 rooms into level 3, and the next room is the clue room. What? They left that bit on the left side, didn't they?
Oh.
Where am I? You're standing at the top of some steps, and down beside you there are 2 doors, and then another set of steps next to those, leading to another door.
Okay.
Then in the middle of the room, there's a table with some objects on it.
Once again, the room's undergone a bit of a recolour. It looks darker and has a more of an earthy stone look, with the Nil Rem sign that was previously etched into one of the stone shields above the doors removed. On the table, we've got the shields. There's also a dagger. I think we know from past experience that you're in trouble if you pick that up. A jar of stardust and a whole chicken. A whole chicken.
So that goes in the knapsack, bones and all. What do you think about the recolour they've done here, David?
Yeah, it works. I mean, that was the whole point in making the rooms the way they were. It had that built in, the relighting and recolouring. That was assumed from the beginning.
In Series 1, it was a lot darker and felt more menacing. I personally think that was a better fit for level 3.
On the screen on the left-hand side there, we got the reproduction of it used for the Nightmare Geek Week episode. How involved were you in the making of that?
Well, I did some bits and pieces. I did, but I don't think they all got used.
At this point in the recording, we showed David some pictures of the Geek Week clue room.
Yeah, that's made up from components. Yeah, I know the guy who did that. This is for the YouTube version, yeah?
It is, yeah, Geek Week here.
So he's obviously used bits and remade them.
It looks stretched and skewed a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's they had to fit it into the widescreen ratio, didn't they?
Yeah, because all mine were based on 4:3 aspect ratio. I don't know if you saw any of the reworkings I did on my website, which is showing the dungeons 300 years later.
Oh, right. Okay.
All grown with ivy and completely...
I think one of them certainly was used for the Geek Week episode, but Lord Fear's headquarters overgrown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did that. I did some close-ups of the columns as well for short, for cuts. I think I used Lightwave to make the columns.
I like your reworking of the bomb room with the outline of the Dungeoneer on the wall.
Yeah, Hiroshima inspired.
And let me tell you, never in my entire life have I stopped laughing so quickly. Bomb rooms are a bit of a bone of contention on the podcast. We're not a fan of them, to be honest.
It's not your fault. You did as well with them as you could, but they do look a little bit silly to our eyes.
I did a separate painting of a bomb, and I did the lettering wrapped round the bomb. Tim wrote all over the back of it, "You must not use this." And the reasoning given was that they were going to be selling to foreign countries, and bomb wasn't the right word.
Yeah.
And shouldn't be allowed.
So on that subject, there was a French version, Le Chevalier du Labyrinthe, and there was a Spanish version called El Rescatar del Talisman.
Yeah.
The chambers in these were often based on your work, but did you do any actual work for either of them?
No.
You didn't at all?
Not specifically. There were a number of spin-offs. I did pretty well all the book jacket designs for the Corgi book series with Dave Morris. So I did all that. They were great fun. I did the cover for the Nightmare board game.
I've got a copy of that. It's a very, very good design for the board game, but it's actually based on the architecture in season 4, while the board game itself was based on the architecture in the first 2 years. You even got the picture of the Dungeoneer, and the Dungeoneer's got an eye shield on his arm, and the eye shield, of course, doesn't appear in the game at all.
No, I didn't really get to see the foreign versions.
I've seen a few of them. The Spanish version deviates a very, very long way from Nightmare a lot of the time. The French version's sort of a halfway house between the two.
Did I take the chicken?
Yeah, take the chicken.
Leo places the chicken in his knapsack, and we hear Mogdred laughing, and then...
Warning, team! Oh, I wish it wouldn't do that. Stand by for the big freeze, gentlemen. Just as I predicted. And as for you lot, well, time continues in your world. And before you know what, it'll be time to join us once more. So until we meet again, remember, adventure returns when the fire burns.
So what do we think of the episode as a whole?
I'd say it's the best episode of season 3 so far.
Yeah.
Much stronger air of threat in most chambers than the early few ones, especially after reaching level 3. It's also moving much faster than the first few episodes. I calculate that we saw 15 different locations in this episode, which is very good. So they're flying through at some pace. The team are good, even though they do need some prompting to do the obvious on occasion. They're not the most colourful team that we've ever seen, but they're not dull. So I'd say, yeah, this is better material than we've had in the first 4 episodes beyond doubt.
It's definitely the best team of Series 3 at the moment. There's a few firsts, first view of Level 3. First time that anything other than a whirlway has been used to go between levels. We got our first instance of the gargoyle basically being a wall monster.
That's not necessarily a good thing, man.
And first appearance of Hordris.
First speaking appearance, certainly.
Yeah. It moves on at a decent pace without feeling rushed. Have you got any thoughts, David?
Well, I was pleased to see so many of my artworks in one episode. It's not quite as I remember it, but then my memory is a bit flawed, I suppose, after all this time.
Anybody's would be after more than 30 years.
I think Alan Boyd was saying on Twitter that Series 3 is the ideal series to have your input because it's really where they're at the peak with your artwork.
It's where the widest variety of his artwork is as well. A lot of it's been enhanced with new features as well. If you want to do a retrospective of David's work, that is the ideal one to look at.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's what I felt about it. It was quite a good showcase for me.
Before we move on, we've got a new feature here. We're now going to go over to our youth correspondent, a certain young feathered Menace, who's going to give her thoughts on the show.
Hello, this is Feathered Menace and I like nightmare, snakes, birds, dinosaurs, and did you ever notice that the drums at the start of the intro sound like a rickroll at the beginning of it? Once you know that, you cannot stop hearing it. And the title that Leo stands to summon Merlin in this episode looks like a Roblox spawn point. Season 3 shows the light force quite small and distorted, and it's hard to see sometimes. I do wish the light force was like Season 1 and 2, normal sized. Overall, it's a very good episode. And I'm very impressed that they got to level 3 because Season 3 is a very hard season. No one wins and it's a challenge that I like. And I'm glad to be on the Temporal Discussion Nightmare podcast.
Feathered Menace, I'm never going to forgive you for pointing that out to me. I've devoted my life to Nightmare for 35 years, and you've done that to me. But thanks for sharing your thoughts, love. I wonder what Ed Welch will think of that if he ever heard it. I love you really, Feathered Menace, honestly. Love you really.
Thank you very much, Feathered Menace. And now there's just the admin to do. David, before we say anything else, do you have anything you want to plug at the moment?
There are things afoot, but I can't.
We get told that a lot, unfortunately. Yeah. Plug how to get your book, though.
Acorn Books, yeah, they do it if you find them online.
Art of Nightmare.
I send off signed copies of it if people get in touch through the website. DavidRowe.net. A lot of images on it, gallery, most of the artworks I've done, but I've sold most of the originals now. All the Nightmare originals are archived. I did a real cut down price on them, and they'll properly archived and looked after rather than just back in the wardrobe.
I was looking at your pencil drawings, the Labyrinths of Fear cover, and it's quite spectacular.
Well, that's interesting because I do G-clay prints of them. I tempted to stop that because the inks in my Canon Pixma Pro cost so much that those prints are inaccurate. They're very good on archive paper and with pigment dyes. It's like museum quality, if you like.
So as for us, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at NightmarePod.
If you want to support the podcast, we're Nightmare Pod on Patreon.
Speaking of Patreon, here's a shout out to Keepers of the Book of Quest, Peter Pulsford and David N. Rabbit.
Advisors, Benjamin Bloom, Peter Sidorn and David Thompson.
And Dungeoneer Peter Corridge. I'd also like to add this point. A big thank you to our youth correspondent, Feathered Menace.
Support us on Patreon at Dungeoneer level or above to get your name mentioned on the podcast. Higher level perks also receive merchandise, have access to exclusive episodes, and if you pledge as a keeper of the Book of Quests, we'll even offer you the chance to be a guest on the podcast.
Our website is nightmarepod.co.uk.
If you're looking for temporal discussion merchandise, including t-shirts, stickers, and other products, it's at nightmarepod.redbubble.com. Can I just mention Alec Westwood recently obtained one of our shirts?
And you can email us at podcast@nightmarepod.co.uk.
And just keep telling yourself, it's only a podcast, isn't it?